Good morning, everybody. This is Tom Sawyer speaking. I'm going to give just another minute or so. I see attendees are coming in. Appreciate you joining me here this morning. So I see Andrea and Klaus and Dan and David and another David and another David, James and Jeremy and Catherine and Kurt and Maggie and Melanie and Mauricio, Pete and Sandra and Wayne. So I think we've got, we're right at about the top of the hour here. So just another couple seconds here. I appreciate your joining me. And this is kind of a new thing for us. We were used to using Zoom for meetings, but not for webinars. So it's first time we've been using this platform, or really any platform to do presentations. So bear with me as I try to get it right. So and this should also be recording. So hopefully we'll have this available afterwards if you need to come back and look at some of this stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and kick it off. So again, thanks for joining us today. We're fielding a lot of questions about this PPP loan and stimulus in general, and we thought this would be a good idea to kind of put together a little presentation. You know, the PPP loan itself, you know, the initial funding with the banks claiming they were open on April 3rd, the reality was it was, you know, the 6th or the 7th at best, where most of the banks were open and accepting applications. You know, the initial funding for that depleted pretty quick, but, you know, for people that were applying in those first few days of the program, you know, we were seeing, you know, we're seeing fundings happening. We're seeing fundings recently. Last week was a big week, so it's taking them a while to get the funding, you know, up and running. And you know, as that funding comes out, of course, our concern is, you know, how do we use it? So you know, they ran out of the funding in the first tranche. They've added a whole bunch more money and reopened the program here in the last week or so. You know, as a review, the loan amount is 2.5 times your average monthly payroll costs, which includes your payroll and employer provided health insurance, employer, you know, paid retirement plan contributions, and that's the payroll cost part, and that's how the amount of the loan is based, 2.5 times those amounts. You can use it for paying those things, plus rent, utilities, you know, and mortgage payments and a few other little things. Of course, it's, as we've mentioned, and as the program was designed, it's forgivable if you use it properly. And any amounts that are not forgiven are repayable over 24 months at a 1% interest rate. So I'm going to point out that, you know, we're finding that the law that was originally, you know, laid out, a lot of these things have changed. I think originally the PPP loans were supposed to be a 10-year loan at 4%, and they've turned into a 24-month loan at 1%. So I think the Treasury is you know, moving some things around and making decisions based on, you know, how they think they can better handle the program. So loan forgiveness. This SBA has not provided guidance yet. They're releasing every week, every other week, in some cases every few days, updates to a Q&A that they have posted on their website. The problem is they have not addressed anything related to forgiveness in their Q&A. And the way this will likely work is they're going to provide guidance. The bank, you know, which you got the PPP loan from, will then have to look through that guidance and determine what forms they feel are necessary to allow you to apply for that forgiveness. And I guarantee you the banks are waiting for the SBA to provide that guidance as well as we are. We do know what's in the law. I've mentioned it. Sometimes that stuff has been changing, so we're going to kind of read between the lines here a little bit, read what the law says, and then there's some other things in reference to full-time equivalents, which we're pulling from past guidance on other programs that had to do with full-time equivalent employees. So, so basically, you've got this PPP loan. You need to use at least 75% of it for payroll costs, and no more than 25% of it for rent and utilities and that kind of thing. At some point, obviously, there'll be this forgiveness where we prove that we've spent these numbers correctly in order to get that forgiven. The other thing that I kind of like to point out is that you need to maintain wages and the number of employees, and we're talking full-time equivalent employees here. So what does that mean? I mean, 30 hours is our best guess of what a full-time equivalent weekly earning is. So if you've got one person who's working 30 hours and two people that are working 15 hours, you've got two full-time equivalent employees. And there's some important periods that have to do with the look back. So, the February 15th to June 30th of last year, and then January 1st to February 29th of this year, they're using those two periods to look back, calculate how many employees you had, and then say you need to maintain that same number of employees during this third period, which is from the date that you get your PPP loan out 8 weeks. And they want to see that you're paying your employees for and roughly the same number of employees. So I'm going to point out a little something. We've encountered some mindset issues relating to the use of these PPP funds with business owners who maybe aren't working right now, or they're not at full capacity. The government is using the business owner as a conduit to keep employees paid. So if you've got someone that was employed before all of this that you furloughed, they want you to bring them back, and they want you to pay them with this money instead of them being on unemployment. And that is the system that they're designing here. So we're encountering some resistance from folks who say, I got to pay these people to do nothing. Well, you don't have to pay them to do nothing, but you have to pay them. If you have nothing for them to do, then you're paying them to do nothing. So you need to try to work on what else, if they can't be doing their normal job, what else could they be doing to bring value to your business? Could it be training? Could it be cleaning up workspaces or doing some other task for the benefit of the business while you're paying them, even if you can't pay them to do their regular job? So, again, we're going to wait for the SBA and your bank will provide the necessary documents on what it is we're going to have to show, to get these loans forgiven. So we've been playing with this a lot, trying to figure out the best way to really budget to make sure that the most amount of this loan is forgiven. So, we've really determined that the best way to do it is to start by calculating your 25% non-payroll piece. So, let's just, and I've got an example that we'll go through towards the end of the slides here, and I appreciate the any comments or questions. We'll go through the questions again a little later. But so basically, we're going to start by calculating the 25%. If you're using more than 25%, then you're only allowed to consider 25% here. If you're unable to use 25%, and we're seeing some of that, where payroll is high and the fixed costs of rent are low, and people are looking at it and saying, well, we can't spend that much on our rent. It's not that much, and we'll talk about that. But we're calculating the calculate the 25%. If you're not going to use the 25% here, then we're going to add it to the 75% payroll portion. And if you can use it for payroll, then we can get it forgiven. So, so as we calculate the 75% plus any leftover from the non-payroll, and then we want to take those two amounts and budget that out weekly on your payroll to make sure that you're going to maximize the benefit. So we're seeing people do various things to try to make sure they're using all of this. It's anything that any payroll that you have that you're paying during this period of time. Even if this is a one time where you're actually allowed to pay people to do nothing. That's what they want you to pay your people that you were paying before, even if they're not doing anything. So, budgeting this out, and it'd be really nice if we had guidance because, most of the folks that we're dealing with have received their PPP loans in the last week to 10 days, and payroll is happening, and they need to make sure they're paying enough of it out so they don't actually have to repay some of this. So strategies to increase the payroll costs if it looks like you're going to be short. Increase hours. If you had someone who was only working part-time, pay them for full-time, pay them for 40 hours. Increase pay. So, we've seen some folks who are giving, some bonus pay, some add-on to the pay for their employees who maybe are, going above and beyond, working during the middle of all this, or being put in, a hazard pay scenario. So really the challenge is you can't go more than, any one pay period cannot be more than $100,000 annualized, which means that you can't pay somebody more than $1,923 a week, or else the amount over and above that will not count towards your payroll costs. So pay bonuses. If you got somebody that's on a bonus plan, maybe we're accelerating the bonus a little bit just to make use of some of these funds instead of paying it later. Add or upgrade employees. So we're seeing, and one of the questions that we're getting is, hey, can I'm losing some people. Is it okay if I add new ones? So it's a total number of employees and a total amount of wages thing. It's not specific to this employee and that employee. So, if you lose a $100,000 person and you can add a new $100,000 person, or if you can add two full-time $50,000 people, or really even two, half-time $50,000, you're equaling the same $100,000 person, and that's completely fine. I think we're also hearing a little bit from our business owners that we've got some employees who maybe are showing their true colors, where they'd rather collect unemployment and sit at home and not do anything than to work. I'd suggest you maybe use the opportunity for them to be gone and find someone who's a little bit more aggressive and willing to work and might be better for your organization. Can you add family to the payroll? So there's a big question. So you can add people to the payroll, but you should be adding people who are actually providing some kind of service, particularly if you're adding family members. So you don't want to just add family members to do nothing, but if you can replace or give them a job, then that would be okay. If they were working for you before and you were shut down and you're paying everybody to do nothing, it's okay to pay those same family members and yourself as the owner to do nothing. But the reality is you don't want to all of a sudden create a new family person who was never on the books and never in the payroll, who's not actually doing something for the business and pay them. So you're going to want to, that doesn't mean you can't find something for them to do and create a new job for them during this period of time. So, and again, our key here is that you need to budget weekly through this 8-week period of time to make sure you're using it correctly. Because of the $100,000 annualized per pay period threshold, where you can't pay anybody more than $1,923, you're not going to be able to wait till week 7 or 8 and throw somebody a big bonus and have this work. You really need to spread it out and look at what your costs are, look at who you need to pay, add all that stuff up and see, do we have enough payroll, or are we going to be paying some of this back to the government? So it's an opportunity to use the funds in a good way and not have to pay it back. So just to summarize, calculate the 25% non-payroll, budget that out over 8 weeks to make sure you're going to spend that. Calculate your 75% payroll. Add any amount from the non-payroll that you're not going to use, and then budget out the total for the payroll piece to see if you're going to use it. If there's any unspent loan, look for ways to increase the spending, bonuses, other things that you might be able to do. Increases in pay. Just be careful with long-term increases in pay. If you weren't really going to give an increase in pay, you're better off to present it as a bonus during this period of time, so that there's an end date to it. And then, if you're not going to get there, put that money aside because you're going to end up repaying it. A 24-month repayment is, a pretty heavy repayment term. We've got somebody we saw, I think it was about $150,000 PPP loan, and it was, $5,000 or a little more a month to repay that, over a 24-month period of time. And, obviously our plan with him is to make sure he gets this forgiven. And if he's short just a little bit, and the repayment isn't so bad. So here's just a quick example scenario. So we've got a company that has a $200,000 PPP loan. 25% of that is $50,000 for the non-payroll expenses. The 75% is $150,000, but this company only has $40,000 of that non-payroll expenses, so they're going to be $10,000 short. So we're going to add that 10 to the 150, and now we have $160,000 to pay for payroll. That's got to be spent over 8 weeks. If they don't spend it during that period of time, then they're going to have to make a repayment. So just a quick example of how that's going to work. So I know there's a lot of questions. I see some stuff popping up here in the Q&A tab. But I've also had some folks who sent me some in advance. So let me just go through those here real quick. Has the official application for forgiveness been released? No, it has not. Hopefully pretty soon, but we've been saying that for a number of weeks. Is it gross or net salaries to be used to calculate forgiveness? It is gross salary. So payroll costs are the same for forgiveness as they were for the loan amount. So it's gross payroll, not including the employer taxes, but including the employee taxes, and employer provided health care costs, and employer portion of any retirement plan contributions. And again, there's a $100,000 cap on that. So if the owner is or if anybody is making more than $100,000, then you have to remove that piece that is their pay over $100,000. We'd be able to include payroll costs paid, incurred, or both during the 8-week period. So it's the way that it reads is it's got to be an expense, paid during the 8 weeks and incurred during the 8 weeks. So our challenge really has been, what about that first payroll? So most folks are cash basis. So if you made the payroll during the 8 weeks, then it's includable, but you got to pay it. So we've actually seen and worked with some companies on maybe adjusting their pay cycle so that we can make sure we get enough paychecks in during that period of time. We've got some folks that are accelerating maybe their last payroll because it's, a day or two. The pay date is a day or two after the date of the end of their 8-week period of time. So we're just sliding the pay date up just a day or two to make those payments and get them included in there. Which portion of payroll taxes will count? And again, it's just the employee's part. The employer portion is not included. So thank you, Melanie, for those questions. So I've got a question relating to forgiveness, relating to paying past bills. So, the challenge is it's got to be incurred and paid during this period of time. So, if you didn't pay, April's rent, that's a question. I think if you're paying it in April, I think it's paid during the period and it's incurred for April. I think you're probably fine. If you didn't pay March, I think it's outside of that. But you're going to want to make sure to pay the rents that you can during those period of time, and they're not going to let you prepay. So if your period ends before the end of June, they're not going to let you, I think, pay July. There's a quick question about the grant, the EIDL grant. And our best understanding of that so far is that if it wasn't included in your PPP loan, and I can tell you most of them were not, then it's really not an event. It's money. You don't really have to. You're supposed to use it for certain things, but I'm not seeing anything indicating that they're going to be asking for any accounting of that amount. So certainly, if that changes, we'll have to adjust for that. And let's see. How to calculate in detail the average full-time equivalent employee. Okay, that's a little bit more complicated, but the long and short of it is you need to look at these look-back periods that I mentioned here in the prior slide, which were these dates. And 30 hours is considered one full-time equivalent per week. If your pay cycle is every 2 weeks, then it's 60 hours. And then our best guess is how you handle the people that are under that is you add up all their hours for a week and divide by 30. So if you've got 4 people that are working 15 hours a week, you've got 60 hours. That's 2 full-time equivalent employees. Hours worked over 30 don't really help you. So if you got people working 40, that's not more than one full-time equivalent employee. How is the relation between FTE to decrease in wages, and can personnel be rehired and laid back off later? So, our best guess on this is that they want you to bring people back. I think once we get through the end of June, if you've used up and you should have used up any PPP loans by that point, and if there's not the need to maintain the employee level, then it would be okay to furlough those folks again. Hopefully by the end of June we're in a better place and everybody's open and can resume. And then can I hire different people for different functions? And I answered that, yeah. So that's not a problem. We can definitely do that. It's not you have to hire back the exact same people. You have to hire back the exact same number of people and pay them in total roughly the same amount of wages. So I think I've got some more Q&A here. Okay, so bear with me a sec. This is new to me. So let's see. As far as the FTEs that just been hired in Q1, there's really the trick I think is going to be that there's that first date which is 2019 dates, and there's the second date which is 2020 dates, and if you have some leeway, I think, in which of those 2 sets of dates you use. So whatever is going to work best for you, I think, is the answer to that. If you've got people that were just hired, if they were hired after these look-back dates, then they don't really count. So if you hired them March 1st and laid them off April 1st, they don't really count into the calculation. So let's see. Temporary pay increase, are they acceptable? Yeah. You just can't you got to watch the total. So if you've got somebody making $1,600 a week, if you give them $400 more, they're over the $1,923 a week, which is the $100,000 per week amount, and the extra over $1,923 won't count. and same question. If you got someone who's making 40 and for 2 months you're paying them 90, and go back to 40 afterwards. Yeah, I don't see that as a problem. I mean, particularly bonuses are included, so I would call that. I would just make it clear. I mean, certainly somebody getting more money is going to be excited about it, but they need to understand that it's not a long-term event and that it's a bonus. It's a bonus for people showing up in a hard time and helping your business. So that's fine. So what would need to be repaid? It's a little bit of an odd calculation. It's whatever you used for the payroll, which is supposed to be 75%. So if you use it all, then it's not a problem. If you're short, though, the amount that you didn't use or in the right proration would be repayable. So you wouldn't have to repay back everything. It would really be just the stuff you didn't spend. Okay, I answered that already. Thanks for the question, Cindy. It says the banks have been instructed to send their clients back to their CPA, so there's no conflict, and they don't have any answers yet. Yeah, that's great. I agree. So I think right now you've got the business owner was asking their bank, they're asking their CPA, and they're both pointing at each other. Saying, well, you got to get it from them, and you got to get it from them. And the reality is we need guidance from the SBA on how this is going to work, because I expect that ultimately the banks are going to have to collect this information from their clients in order to apply for this to be forgiven, or else the loan will continue and the bank is somehow on the hook for collecting that from the customers. So I think that absolutely SBA is going to have to provide additional guidance, and it'll be a work with us, work with your bank to provide all the proper documentation. And for folks that have good payroll records and have good accounting systems, this is just a matter of pulling the right reports and putting it together at the back end. But I'm telling you, you need to have a budget, and you need to be looking at this stuff, with a plan going forward, not after 8 weeks is up looking back, go, what are we going to owe them back? So, do this now. Question, we had salary plus employee taxes, or it's employee taxes. So it's the gross pay. Think of it as the gross payroll. So it's not the employer taxes. It's just the gross payroll. When is the 8 weeks? It's the date you get. There's some question about this, but I believe that the answer is it's when you get the money. So when the money hits your bank account, I think you start the year 8 weeks right then. Can we increase wages to people? Yeah, I would again do some of that as a bonus. Does other sources of equity mean retained earnings, shareholder partner equity distributions owed to shareholder partners? Not sure. I am exactly sure what you're asking there, and maybe I'm working my way down the list, and I think I'm working it the right way. I think what you're asking is, so the banks have been set I'll explain this. The first tranche came out, and a lot of really big companies, it's been in the news, went in and got a bunch of money from the PPP loan, and it burned it all up, and there wasn't enough for most of the small businesses. So, Roost Chris, Shake Shack, AutoNation, some of these big companies went in and got, $10 million of PPP loan, which is the maximum amount most of them are supposed to get. So they've come out with they don't want businesses that have other sources of equity or have access to public markets, or who haven't been impacted by this coming for money. They want to use it for the small guys. So I know we've received multiple emails over the last week from the banks saying, you can repay this by May 5th or 7th, and it's not a problem if you think that you shouldn't have gotten this money. And you have to certify that you have been affected and you have no, you don't have other sources. So again, I think they're really aiming for the big companies who can float a bond offering. There's nobody on this call who can float a bond offering. We deal with small business. You guys can't access public markets and sell. We don't have anybody who's publicly traded and can sell more stock or do a bond offering. So, that I think is something that is good. I don't think we need to worry about this. And I guess if you're in the business of selling software to restaurants so they can sell stuff online, it's very possible your business had a big increase, not a big decrease. So maybe those folks shouldn't be, approaching this PPP loan because they've really seen a big increase. I think most folks have seen, at the very least, a lot of uncertainty. When on April 3rd, when this thing opened and you had to make a decision to apply or not, I don't think any of us had any idea what the month of April or May is going to look like, and we still don't. So what's the consumer going to look like? What are our customers going to look like when we come out of this thing? And I think there's enough question here to say that most everybody that I'm talking to is qualifying for this. Do I have to put someone on the payroll, or can I just pay them weekly? Yeah, it's payroll, so it's got to run through the payroll system. They got to get a W-2 and be on your 941s or through your payroll company if you're if you're using a PEO or something like that. So it's not 1099s. It's wages. Mnuchin talks about current business activity. What about planning for the near-term future? I think, this program runs through the end of June. I think we're going to see severe impacts for years to come. And until we're all fully open, and here in Florida, there's just parts of it that are now a little bit open. I think people are going to feel the effects of this. There's a question about what the 8-week period of time is. Our understanding is it's from the time you get the funds to out 8 weeks. And I know there's been some. I'm getting a comment here relating to the Broward County Chamber of Commerce saying that it's from the 15th of February to June 30th. But obviously that's a lot more than 8 weeks. So the SBA talks about a covered period, and that covered period is that February 15th to June 30th, and that definition is kind of loaded. It means different things for different parts of this. I think really it comes back to from the time you get the loan out 8 weeks, unless that 8 weeks period is going to end after June 30th, and then hopefully we'll have an answer to how we deal with that. I answered that. If an employee was fired for cause during January to February, do we need to hire them back? No. You don't need to hire them back, but you need to find someone else to fill their job and hire someone to so your full-time equivalent employee numbers don't get out of whack. If you drop a person, it's a problem. Yes, I'll make the presentation available when we're done. Just running your monthly payroll count. Yeah, it's definitely it's the payroll. It's your normal payroll, or if your payroll has increased, that's fine too. Health insurance is allowed. The employer paid portion is includable. Andrea, I'm gonna defer that. I don't want to answer that here online. Thanks for the comment, Ellie. Yeah, I mean, what we're, and I'll continue through here, but I'll kind of run through to our end here. We're deep in this PPP thing. It impacted the tail end of our tax season, where we were, pretty much had to drop the regular tax prep and get into doing PPP loan submissions. And now we're seeing that this submission to make sure that you get this forgiven is even more work than the loan document. So, if you need some help, let us know. We're getting much better at looking at it. We're developing some of our own internal spreadsheets. We're really deciding that you need to budget this stuff out. So, if I know we got a $100,000 PPP loan, how do I know before it's too late that we're going to get it all forgiven? And that means, looking at the expenses, looking at the payroll, figuring what the payroll is going to be, and then determining, well, gee, we're short a person, we need to hire somebody, or our payroll is going to be too low. Can we give bonuses? Can we increase some pay during this 8-week period of time in order to try to use up some of this money so that it's not wasted and we have to return it? The employer payroll tax match will not count. A person whose prorated salary is higher than $100,000 take a bonus during the period. No, if any one period that's more than $100,000, anything in excess of that $100,000 is not included. Independent contractors would not work. You could add the independent. You could take that person and make them an employee instead of an independent contractor, and that would add them to the payroll instead of paying them. I mean, really, we can see where this has all come together, and it's the people who are independent contractors who've been kind of out of luck, or people who aren't doing enough payroll. We've got some S corp owners who pay themselves very little via payroll. Well, then they got a very little PPP loan, and some that don't pay themselves a payroll go to apply for unemployment, and they can't get it because they're not actually an employee. They're kind of in the middle. If you're paying your employees, they need to come off of unemployment. You can't. This is employment, even if they're not actually working, to get the money. So they can't be on both. Yeah, Beth, that's a little too personal. I'm not going to share that. So Sandra's asking, given that we have we need an audit trail to prove the use of funds, should these funds be kept separately? We know some people that are creating separate bank accounts. We're doing this in a couple of ways. One is, if you've got good accounting, I don't necessarily need to separate it. But if it makes you feel better, what we're doing is we're conducting everything as normal, and then we're transferring the payroll cost or transferring the rent into the main account so that we can match those expenses. We did have somebody who wanted us to change the account which his payroll was coming out of, and that we didn't want to do. It's going to create a problem later. Changing the bank account, there's delays. There's everybody's on direct deposit, and it causes all kind of problems. So we just said no, just transfer. Get your payroll ready, know what your amount is, and then deposit. Transfer from where you've got your PPP money into there to cover. Yeah, I mean, if there's a question about not having great accounting. So, I mean, the best thing to do is to have good accounting. We don't know what the banks are going to want. They may want financial statements for the first 2 quarters of the year. We don't know. So, obviously we recommend you keep good accounting records. And, not to ring my own bell here, but that's what we do. So we've got people that we're engaged in helping them keep their accounting records straight all the time, and so I think tracking it is important. So if you got an invoice for your rent and you paid the rent, keep that. That's what you're going to want. We're not sure exactly what the SBA is going to want for each category, but they may want to see a lease because there's some rules on rent. You just can't triple your rent all of a sudden. They say for leases they're pre-existed, so they may want to see your lease to show that this amount is right, and then you'll show the payments that you made, and that would probably be good enough. Or they may want some kind of a receipt or invoice from your landlord. I don't know. What is the definition of a small business? Great question. And I'm sure there's a definition. I don't have it at the tip of my fingertips, but I mean, for these PPP loans, they're saying, for businesses that are, in most cases under 500, 500 or fewer employees. So I can tell you that, pretty much everybody that we deal with would be considered a small business. We don't have any large corporate, publicly traded companies. I think that's where you would definitely cross the line. Should you switch from weekly payroll to bi-monthly? You don't, not necessarily. I think weekly is easy to track. You get 8 weeks, you get your weekly payroll. I think that's easy enough. I don't think you need to make any changes. So if you don't use the quick answer to your question here, Klaus, is that if you've laid people off and you're happy with the size that you're at and you don't want to bring them back, and you're going to be paying some of it back. Yeah, it's paid back over a 24-month period of time at 1%. So interest rate's not bad. You got to make good business decisions in the middle of all this, and if you use it to pay people that you've laid off that you want to bring back, then definitely you want to pay them. If you don't want to bring the people back, then you have to decide whether you want to pay them. We're hearing horrible stories about the unemployment system. There's people that have applied weeks ago who have not received any unemployment. So this might screw up their unemployment, or it might help their situation. So that's kind of a something you have to kind of work out. Non-payroll, rent, utilities, if you own your building, paying the mortgage payment. So the stuff that we're tracking, rent, utilities, phone and internet bills, we specifically have something we don't know the answer to, and it's condo association fees. So in our case, we pay a condo association, and included in that is the overhead, CAM, and the utilities are all included in that. Is that going to be considered rent? And I don't know the answer to that. So, I'm like you guys. I'm waiting for some answers from the SBA. So, you start getting more business. Does it affect the loan if you're still using the whole amount for payroll? I don't think so. I think it's possible that they want to see some kind of effect. I think most of us could show some kind of effect, even if it reverts later. But there certainly was enough uncertainty coming into the early April, late, from the time most of our area got shut down, which was right around mid-March, through the 3rd of April when this program opened. There was a huge amount of uncertainty, and it's still pretty uncertain out there right now. So I think most people, Eric, I'm sure you've felt it because you're serving a customer base that is pretty well shut down. So there may be a bounce, but we'll have to wait and see. I say you plan to use the amount over your 8 weeks and get it forgiven. So Trey asks, I saw something released, there must be a need for the PPP or else it has to be given back. What are the parameters to determine if you have a need for the money? You know, again, I think it's, there's no actual, you know, guidance yet from the SBA on need. And I think it comes back to when you applied, did you feel that you might need it? Because there was great disruption in your business. And, you know, unless you're, like I used the example before, unless you're selling systems to take restaurants online so they can, you know, do online, you know, takeout orders, those guys are probably killing it. But I think everybody else is feeling it in some way. You know, it may take months to find out that, you know, in Trey's case here, you know, you may find out that it's months before you realize that you've had customers that went out of business who aren't going to renew. So, you know, I think we're all in a case where we're feeling that going to feel the effect and have a need for the money, unless you're just sitting on a giant pile of cash. And let's see, Dave, the dates are on the slides right there. So, and I'm pretty sure in your case we're using the dates number 2 because you weren't in business most of or part of that first period. So, okay, so I think that covers most of the questions. If anybody has anything kind of last minute they want to throw at me, you know, we can definitely you know, take another one. We're coming up on 10 till or so, and you know, I was not wanting to go on here forever. I was expecting that we could do you know, answer some questions, give you some parameters, and be some use. You know, so you know, one thing that we were looking to do is do some more of this type of webinar and cover some other topics over the next you know, probably couple months anyway. So you know, we'll plan on having another one of these same time next week. And I've got some thoughts on you know, so next week we're going to review any updates that come up on any of this stimulus or anything we get from SBA as far as further guidance. Discuss what we want to, what should a business owner do after the 8-week PPP, you know, funds have been spent. You know, how to do with employee issues, and discuss other sources of funding for your business. So, you know, join us next week. We'll throw out you know, some invites on particularly on the social media. Also, I'll put the webinar recording you know, kind of out there as well. But you know, of course, we're here to help. So if you have any problems or need any help or you know, need some help in deciding what this budget you know, for you is going to look like, you know, please reach out, because we're in the middle of doing that right now for you know, the folks that we do, you know, regular monthly accounting for. We're trying to figure out where they are and make sure they get the best use, because you know, there's a great opportunity here to keep your head in the game as a business owner, and you know, to be in business while everybody else is afraid. And you know, if we can use this government money to make those you know, help pay for some of that, great. You know, keep your employees you know, on if they're good employees, and you know, find stuff for them to do. You know, send them to training. You know, find some good use of time if you're paying them. You know, even if they can't come into your office. So anyway, we'll talk about some more of that stuff next week. In the meantime, you guys have a great week and stay safe, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.